Electric vehicles are important, are seen as important, both in London and nationally, because we have some really big challenges which are common to all of the urban areas that are talking today in terms of trying to address climate change, dealing with air quality, but the UK government and indeed the Mayor of London are also quite excited about electric vehicles as part of a new and emerging kind of green economy. And we think, as in common with all of my colleagues here today, that electric vehicles work very well in an urban setting. So I'm not going to dwell too much on that. In the UK nationally, there is quite unusually cross-party agreement that electric vehicles are very important. And that means that even though governments may change, there is a long-term commitment within national government to this agenda. And in UK politics, that's quite unusual. There are very few things that fall into that kind of protected category where there is a wholesale agreement. And at an officer level, there's an Office for Low-Emission Vehicles, which again is quite unusual because it's set up to cross-cut across, to pull together various government departments. So OLEV has representatives from the Department of Transport, Department of Business, and the department that's responsible for energy and climate change, all working together in one office to support low-emission vehicles. And again, that is quite unusual. Having said that, we cannot boast anything like the level of tax incentives that are available in Norway, to which I aspire hopelessly. But they do have quite a lot of funding, certainly in terms of addressing this kind of an agenda in the UK. OLEV is very well financed and has previously run grant programmes to support infrastructure across the UK, to provide help for consumer grants. So whilst the tax regime is nowhere near as favourable as somewhere like Norway, there are some tax incentives, but there are also point of purchase grants. So electric vehicles, electric cars get a grant for around £5,000 and vans around £8,000 to reduce the differential in price between purchasing a petrol or diesel vehicle and an electric vehicle, which in the UK do carry quite a significant premium. And the government will provides an awful lot of support for research and development in terms of providing training and financing to develop new vehicle technology and to develop expertise in new vehicle technology in the UK. So that's kind of an overview of where we've come from nationally. At a local level, the politics of London is quite complex, and it's one of the big challenges of London as a major city. Obviously, we have the Mayor, who sets a strategic agenda and who chairs the Transport for London, where I work. Transport for London is the strategic transport authority that manages all of the public sector transport, but only manages 3% of the road network. And that's very important to understand when I talk about kind of the work that we're doing in London. Underneath the Mayor sit 33, and I'll repeat that number because it fills my day with horror, 33 local authorities within Greater London who control and manage the local road network. So where Stockholm and Oslo have talked about the city being able to decide where they put charging infrastructure, Transport for London doesn't have that luxury because we don't own the road space. So, and that's kind of a complex context in which we operate. Nevertheless, the Mayor of London is very excited about electric vehicles, very personally committed to the agenda. We launched the Electric Vehicle Delivery Plan in 2009, which set some quite challenging targets and made very significant commitments to providing public charging infrastructure primarily to address range anxiety that's been discussed earlier, to support incentives that were already in place nationally with whatever we could do locally, provide as much information as we could to potential EV purchasers and to support uptake in the vehicle market. And I'll just walk through kind of what we've done in those three areas. So in terms of charging infrastructure, There's some stuff that we can do from a policy perspective. The Mayor sets the planning framework for London and requires that all new developments provide electric vehicle charging spaces. So you won't get planning permission for your new development unless it provides electric vehicle charging as part of whatever parking space allocation is provided. But there was a commitment beyond that to support a comprehensive public network in London. And this is where we focused our efforts primarily since 2009 until very recently. So I talked earlier about central government providing grant funding to support charging infrastructure, and we, in common with 8 other regions in the UK, were granted that initial pot of money to roll out public charging. And we launched we've called the Source London network of electric vehicle charging points in London in 2011. And we now have over 1,400 charge points right across Greater London. They were part financed by central government grants, but the key thing about our approach has been to join together public and private sector partners to deliver this network, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But what we have delivered is 1,400 charge points that can be accessed with one card. It's very, very cheap to join because the electricity is subsidised. But that is recognised as a short-term solution. The people who currently own and operate the charge points won't commit to that in the long term, and we've had to think about different approaches to get a more sustainable future for this network. So just to give you a kind of an idea of how complex this has been, we've recruited a large number of private sector partners who have helped us install ChargePoint in their own car parks and in their own publicly available car parking spaces. So this is things like supermarkets have installed charge points in supermarket car parks, very big car park providers, private sector car park providers, those kind of NCP car parking blocks that it must be familiar all over the place. They have provided car park electric vehicle charge points in those spaces, and that's been supplemented by 28 of the 33 boroughs in London who have also supplied electric charging points on street. So all of these partners have provided charge points. They've agreed to use a common brand, and they've agreed to allow those charge points to be used as part of the Source London network. But this is quite a different proposition from other cities where the city owns the charge point. In London, Transport for London does not own these charge points. We have contributed some to the network. We own 12, but there's 1,406 in the network which have been provided by other public sector bodies or by private sector partners. Those partners own the charge points, they pay for the electricity, but they release them to be used as part of the Source London network. So this is a real collaborative effort that took quite a lot of investment in terms of stakeholder management to herd these cats into a kind of a common vision for this infrastructure in London, not without its challenges, but it has worked really, really well. We have managed very quickly to deliver a large number of charge points right across the city. And you can see it's a pretty meaningless map because it's kind of quite small because London's very, very large, but we've got pretty good coverage over most of the city with those 1,400 charge points. And we have a range of connected types. I think charging infrastructure when we started was quite a challenge in London. We had quite a large population, relatively speaking. We had a couple of thousand of G-Whizzes, who, I don't know if you remember G-Whizzes, kind of ugly, clunky electric boxes that you plugged into a standard 3-pin plug to charge. And we had a large number of those, and we needed to take those users with us into this new world, but also provide a charging infrastructure for new purchasers that were buying brand new vehicles, the Nissan Leafs, the IMEVs, and even a couple of Teslas, although sadly not as many as Norway. So we have a mix, we still have a mix of connected types to service that kind of evolving population of electric vehicle users in London. I talked about the fact that the charge points were established knowing that the business model that we had, where partners were expected to pay subsidised electric vehicle users in London, could only ever be a short-term solution. And last year we moved the Chargeport network forward by tendering for a new management agency to take this network into the next step, to move it into the private sector, to invest in it further and to take it forward. So IER, who are part of the Beloy group, you may be familiar with them. They run the Autolib scheme in Paris. Are people familiar with that scheme? An electric vehicle car club in Paris. So they are now going to take over management and operation of this network from this summer. And what they are committed to do is to work with those existing partners to invest in this Chargeport network and expand it to 6,000 points by 2018 and move to a pay-as-you-go model so that the people who host those charge points get some income back from their investment. And although at the moment, because the volume of the volume of electric vehicle users is low, we are nowhere near 6% or 10% of the population. Those are extraordinary figures. Nevertheless, that gives a long-term business model for electric charging. The people who host those charge points can see that in the long run, this will become a self-sustaining, self-managing infrastructure. And so we're very excited about this because we've now moved from a place where the public sector was funding and supporting the provision of electric vehicle charge points. We've primed that market in London, and we had a large number of private sector companies that were very interested in continuing to provide that charging infrastructure. And we didn't want the public sector to be in a ludicrous position of kind of trying to compete with people who had a lot more money than I did to spend on this. So we've managed to exit that market as public sector providers whilst ensuring that it will continue and grow. And obviously we liaise and will continue to liaise very closely with IER and with other operators in the city to make sure that electric vehicle charging really does continue to grow and flourish. But we're quite pleased not to have to spend any more public money on it because we don't have very much. So quite pleased about that. In terms of incentives, there are, as I said, national tax breaks, although nothing on the scale of things available in Scandinavia, and some direct grants. But we supplement that with a congestion charging discount. So for those of you unfamiliar with London, we also operate a congestion charging scheme in central London. It costs £10 a day to drive in the zone. But if you drive a vehicle that meets the emissions criteria, which is under 75 grams of CO2 per kilometre and is Euro 5 for emissions at the moment, then you drive for free. So, and that, although the congestion charging zone in London is actually quite small, it's very, very emotive, and the availability of that discount is utilised very heavily by the vehicle manufacturers as a marketing hook, and is seen as a real endorsement from a policy perspective of this type of low emission vehicle. So although it's a small concession, it packs, in my opinion, above its weight. I think people take congestion charging discount too seriously, but nevertheless I'm quite pleased that it works so well. When we started working in this area, and I don't know if this is a common experience, what we found was that people didn't understand electric vehicles very well. They weren't familiar with this technology. They didn't understand how these cars would work. And my favourite two questions from one was from a focus group that we ran with people who were identified as people who were interested in electric vehicles. One of the focus group people actually asked, so what you really have to plug these in? Really basic lack of understanding. My other favourite question from a BMW trial, where BMW lent electric minis to a population of people and then monitored them for a year to see how they used them. And their most commonly asked question was, can I take this electric vehicle into the car wash? So there's some real basic lack of information, and I think it's very easy when, like me, you talk to other people in the electric vehicle industry a lot, and I speak to rooms full of people like yourselves who are very well versed in this technology, to forget that there's a huge population of people who don't really know anything about it. And so we work quite hard to provide a website with really quite basic, these are the cars, these are how they work, this is how home charging works, this is how the public network works, providing a map of all the publicly available charging points, where they were, how you access them. This is still, I think, an ongoing issue. We're very pleased that national government have just launched a marketing campaign in the UK working with the car manufacturers to raise the profile of electric vehicles and to educate the public about what they are and how they work. And I think that's actually something that's quite often overlooked, just in terms of education and awareness. We have done quite a lot to try to boost vehicle uptake. In TfL, we went through 2 OG framework processes to establish procurement frameworks for both Chargeport networks and for vehicles. We did this work, and then we had the credit crunch, a change of government, and massive public sector cuts. Massive. So local authorities, on average, had their budgets cut by 30% in the UK with the change of government, which is a huge impact on public sector finance. So the interest that public sector organisations had in purchasing electric vehicles, I have to say, post-budget cut, pretty much low down the agenda. Their focus is on maintaining key frontline services, not on procuring low-emission vehicles. So the EV framework has not been well used by the public sector for vehicle procurement. But the Chargeport framework has been very well used by people who've been grant funded. Those regions up and down the UK have been grant funded by central government, used our framework because it's much easier than having to do their own, because that takes a year. So we saved a lot of time and effort from public sector bodies who were interested in installing charging networks, but the public sector in the UK, the interest and indeed the financial ability to purchase these vehicles, where they do carry such a capital premium, has been diluted in recent years, although it's picking up again now. We obviously hosted the Olympics, you might have remembered, yay. But there were a significant number of electric vehicles in the Olympic fleet, and we installed a huge number of electric charge points to support that fleet. And that gave us really, really good data about the impact of having really mass charging in one place, and how that the local grid